بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين، سيدنا وحبيبنا وشفيعنا ونور قلوبنا وقرة آله وصحبه. الحمد لله رب العالمين، اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه في كل لحظة أبدا عدد نعم الله وأفضاله. اللهم اللهم آتنا من لدنك رحمة وعلمنا من لدنك علما. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. نوينا التعلم والتعليم وتذكر وتذكر والنفع والانتفاع والإفادة والاستفادة والحث على التمسك بكتاب الله وسنة رسوله صلى الله عليه وآله وصحبه وسلم، ودعاء إلى الهدى ودلالة على الخير، ابتغاء وجه الله ومرضته وقربه وثوابه سبحانه وتعالى، مع لطف وعافية برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم إنا نسألك علم لدني ومشرب صافي الهني يا وهاب يا غني. اللهم إنا نسألك علم لدني ومشرب صافي الهني يا وهاب يا غني. اللهم إنا نسألك علم لدني ومشرب صافي الهني يا وهاب يا غني. اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم ألهمنا علما نفقه به أوامرك ونواهيك، وارزقنا فهما نعرف به كيف نناجيك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم إنا نسألك فهم النبيين وحفظ المرسلين وإلهام الملائكة المقربين في عافية يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم أغننا بالعلم وزينا بالحلم وأكرمنا بالتقوى وجملنا بالعافية يا أرحم الراحمين. آمين. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم إنا نستودعك ما قرأناه وما نقرأه في هذا المجلس وما قبله وما بعده، فاحفظه علينا حتى ترده إلينا وقت احتياجنا إليه يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم أكرمنا من نور الفهم وأخرجنا من ظلمات الوهم، وافتح لنا أبواب رحمتك وانشر علينا حكمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. آمين. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم يا من مقاليد الأمور كلها بيده وإليه يرجع الأمر كله، يا فتاح يا عليم، يا فتاح يا عليم، يا فتاح يا عليم، افتح علينا فتحا قريبا. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي، وسدد لساني واهدي قلبي، وافعل كذلك بأحبابي أبدا، وارزقنا كمال فتوح العارفين والفقه في الدين، مع كمال الإخلاص والصدق واليقين والعافية والغنى والنصر والحفظ والنفع والانتفاع وخيرة الدارين وعلوم الأولين والآخرين. آمين. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم، والحمد لله رب العالمين. الفاتحة. Amin, 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 Ya Rabbal Alameen. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. We continue for our book, Necessary Reminders for Every Woman about the Affairs of a Religion, written by this great scholar in Islam, السيد محمد بن سالم الحفيظ العلوي الحسيني الحضرمي الشافعي. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala benefit us by him and by his knowledge in both abodes, inshallah. Okay, Alhamdulillah. The last matter we were speaking about was sujud, right? Correct. Yes, yes, correct. And we spoke about also reading Surah Al-Fatiha, and reading Surah Al-Fatiha, like if you were to miss in Surah Fatiha and so on, right? Like how would you rectify a situation, or like coming in halfway through the raka'at, or coming in later and so on. The last lesson we went through all of that, right? So Alhamdulillah. So number 9, sujud prostration, right? Twice, right? So that is number 9 of the integrals of the prayer, right? And I think we've gone through that, right? So I'll just read through it. So what is sujud? Right, so sujud is to place 7 body parts on the ground, and that is basically sujud, right? To place 7 body parts on the ground. So your forehead, right? So including the nose is sunnah, right? The nose is sunnah, and to uncover the nose is another sunnah, right? So to place the nose on the ground is a sunnah. To uncover the nose, right, for the skin of the nose touch the ground is another sunnah. All right. So, like for example, if you're wearing a mask, right, and so therefore your nose is over your mask, right? Right. So placing the nose that is covered on the ground is one sunnah, right? And then pulling the mask down and uncovering the nose is another sunnah. Okay. But not putting the nose on the ground at all, it does not nullify the prayer, right? Because what is compulsory is just the forehead, and the forehead, basically any part on the forehead counts, right? So any part on the forehead, the forehead is basically between the eyebrows and the hairline, right? So anywhere between the eyebrows and the hairline, that will count as your forehead, right? So any part on the forehead, the skin must touch the ground, and that is wajib. That is a wajib, right? So forehead on the ground, then 2 palms and 2 knees and the bottom of the toes, right? So meaning the soles of the toes has to be on the ground, with the toes pointing towards the Qibla. Then of course all of these do not have to be uncovered, right? You can have them covered, right? So that she lifts her behind, I mean her bottom, higher than her front, right? So she's on an incline. I think all this we have gone through before, right? So I will just run through it quickly, inshallah. So we have gone through all of this before. I saw her bottom, it is higher than her front. There has to be an incline, and there has to be an incline in the position of her body. Number 3, that she does not sujood with her forehead on anything that moves because of her movement, right? So she is not allowed, right, to use her garment, right, to be like a like a cloth by which she makes her sujud on. She should not be doing sujud on the garment that she is wearing, right? So and that her forehead is uncovered, right? So as you mentioned, it's compulsory for her to have her forehead uncovered, and for women to understand these matters well, because some women perform sujud on their hijab that is covering their forehead, right? So they wear their hijab such that the hijab comes down to their eyebrows, right? So there is no space for them to be able to sujud on the skin of their forehead, right? Because they bring the prayer garment or a telekung, they bring the prayer garment down to their eyebrows, right? So it's like, and even for hijab, I try and push the hijab, and get children also to push the hijab up, so as to expose the forehead. And then sometimes I see children, like I don't know why the hijab is always right to their eyebrows. I push it up. I push it up to the to the hairline. So that when they do their sujud is correct, right? Or their prayer garment covering their forehead, and so on, hence causing for their sujud to be not to be valid, right? So this is about sujud, and I think we have gone through all of it, right? So number 10, right, the 10th integral for the prayer, right? So we have number 10, al-ashir at-tuma'nina fi sujud, right? So this one is again the tuma'nina. We know for every integral there is tuma'nina, right? So we'll just repeat it, right? So tuma'nina, okay, in sujud. Okay. Okay, number 11. Right? And we've gone through tuma'nina from before. Okay, so number 11. Al-hadi ashar. الجلوس بين السجدتين. Right, so to sit down between the two sujuds, right? To sit like, between the two sujuds. Okay, and any form of sitting is valid. Okay, so you don't have to sit in a particular way. There are sunnah ways by which you can sit, right? There are sunnah ways by which you can sit, but there is no like wajib particular way to sit. As long as you are seated, right? So whether you are seated with your legs folded underneath you, whether you are seated if you're cross-legged, whether you are seated, with your legs stretched out in front of you, right? As long as you are seated, right, you just have to be seated, right, in some way or form, in some way or other. All right. So number 11, الجلوس بين سجدتين ويشترط فيه ألا تطوله زيادة على الذكر المشروع فيه وأقل التشهد. Right. So the only condition with regards to sitting between the two sujuds, that is the first sitting, right? Is that the condition, right? On condition, one does not lengthen the sitting between the two sujuds more than the dhikr that has come from the Prophet. Okay, right? Now, okay, and not longer than the minimum tashahud. Okay, so not to be too long, right? So basically, this is a short rukun. Is a short rukun. Short rukuns are supposed to be kept short. Right? So you're not supposed to lengthen short rukuns. So basically what has come from the Prophet ﷺ is to read Rabbi firli warhamni wajburni warfa'ni warzuqni wahdini wa'afini wa'fa'ani. Right? That is the zikr that has come from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So however you want to sit, you can sit. Right? Of course, there is a sunnah way of sitting, which I will draw for you. Right? So there is so when it comes to the sitting down between the two sujuds, you can basically do it however you want to do it. There is no rule. Right? So however you want to sit lah. Right? So this is why I mentioned before with regards to having sprained an ankle, right? If you want to, if someone wants to sit like this, if someone has sprained an ankle, right? Right, and they want to sit basically on their bottom like this, and they want to lift their legs up like this, they can do so if they want to. Right? If the ankle here is swollen, for example, and they can't sit on the ankle, you don't want to sit like this, very well, right? They don't actually have to do, to fold their legs underneath them, right? Of course, the sunnah, like if I look from the back of a person, right, from the behind of a person, right, is the back of a person, okay, right, is that the foot is laid out or the foot is flattened underneath the person, like that, and the other foot is propped up. This is sunnah way of sitting. Okay. All right. Okay, there's a sunnah way of sitting. One foot is propped up, right, and the toes are facing the front, right, and the other foot is flattened underneath the person. This is the sitting between the two sujuds. Later this is called iftirash, right? My pen is not working. Allah. Okay, never mind lah. Okay, so it is iftirash, right? So the this kind of sitting, right? But basically, however someone wants to sit lah, right? There is no rule, right? There is no particular wajib form of sitting. You can sit however you want to sit, but of course, the sunnah way is the best way. If you can do it this way, if you can't do it this way, then some people they just sit on their feet. right? So they just fold their they just fold their feet, underneath them. And some people they sit in like this, right? And then they just fold their feet backwards. Okay, right. So basically, if you want to sit this way, you can very well do so. Okay, right. So someone want to sit this way, right? With their feet folded beneath them, they can very well do so. All right. Naam. Okay, this it. I see you recite Rabbi Fili warhamni wajibuni warfa'ani warzuqni wahdini wa'afini wa'fu'ani, and do not lengthen. I do not go into other forms of dua. There is no sunnah in doing so. And in fact, in some opinions, it can possibly nullify your prayer. Okay. All right, so number 12. Right, 12 rukun. Okay. So of course number 12 will be tumanina, right? Tumanina in sitting in. Okay, and number 13. Okay. So in the second rak'at, right? In the first rak'at, so after sitting, right, you go back into sujood. So it goes back into sujood, right? And then stand up, right? So stand up, and then continue onto the second rak'at. Second rak'at, right? And then you have the first attahiyah. The first attahiyah is sunnah. It is not wajib. The first attahiyah is sunnah. So you will not find it in the intricals of the prayer, because the intricals of the prayer only speak about what is wajib, right? And then so which is why number 13, it jumps all the way to the final tashahhud, right? So the final tashahhud. The final tashahhud, and inshallah we will be speaking more about it, right? So the final tashahhud, basically it comprises of at-tahiyatu lillah. Right? There are few things that it comprises of. Right? So the first one is at-tahiyatu lillah. Okay, that is wajib. Right? So if someone has not memorized the tashahhud and they are finding it hard to memorize the entire thing, because the entire thing can be quite long, for especially like converse and so on. Right? They can find it a bit long. Right? So the full one will be at-tahiyatul mubarakatul salawatul tayyibatu lillah. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمد رسول الله. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد كما صليت على سيدنا إبراهيم وعلى آل سيدنا إبراهيم، اللهم بارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد كما باركت على سيدنا إبراهيم وعلى آل سيدنا إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. This is one that most of us, if you grew up doing this, you will be familiar with that one, right? So, but what is wajib? Because this is we're learning about the wajib, right? And this is why our learning wajib is important, right? Because if let's say you make a mistake in the sunnah, right, it wouldn't be that you would know that your prayer is valid. You will know that your prayer is valid because you made a mistake in the sunnah and not in the wajib. But if you made a mistake in the wajib, right, then you know that your prayer is problematic, right? And that you have to redo it, or you have to repray the entire thing, or it nullifies your prayer. You're gonna know what are the consequences, in messing up a wajib, right? So here I'm just gonna type out what is wajib. So at-tahiyatu lillah is wajib. Right, that's it. So the entire thing, at-tahiyatul mubarakatu salawatu tayyibatu lillah, right? All of it is extra. It's also now, mashallah, mashallah. At-tahiyatu lillah is the only wajib. That is the first part, right? And then assalamu alayka ka ayyuhan nabiyyu wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, right? That is the second wajib, right? Assalamu alayna wa ala ibadillahis salihin. Okay. Assalamu alayna wa ala ibadillahis salihin, right? And then the shahada. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammad Muhammadar Rasulullah. Okay. All right. So that is number 4. Okay, that is basically the minimum tashahud. This is the minimum tashahud. Okay. And then basically that's it lah. With this rukun qawli, right? Rukun qawli meaning it is a verbal integral, which means you gotta be able to hear yourself. Right. So you need to be able to hear yourself as how you should be able to hear your Fatiha yourself. In fact, all of the recitations of the prayer, you should be able to hear yourself, even those that are sunnah, if you want the reward of sunnah. Right. So for example, when you do your ruku' and you go Subhana Rabbiyal Azim wa bihamdi, right? If you can't hear yourself, then you don't get the reward. You actually don't get the reward, right? So you gotta be able to hear yourself, right? So we emphasize this more on what is wajib, what is compulsory, because the validity of your prayer depends on it, right? That's basically it lah. Right? That's why we emphasize on it a bit more. Right? So when you say when you read Surah Fatiha, right, the first takbir, and then the tashahud, and then the salawat and the salams, right? These would be the what is compulsory in the prayer. To articulate that you can hear yourself. Right? It does not mean that you don't really articulate the sunnahs. No, you do articulate the sunnahs as well, right? But not being able to hear yourself or not articulating it loud enough would not it would not be a threat on the validity of your prayer. Obviously your prayer is counted lah. Your prayer is still valid. It is just that you don't get the reward. Right? So it's as if you did not do any sunnah. It is as if you did not do any sunnah when you can't hear yourself. All right. Now, right. So now, right. So for what is wajib, what is compulsory, you should be able to hear yourself. Right. So these 4 things that I just typed out in front of you, all these 4, it is as compulsory as I wrote them. Right. So at-tahiyatu lillah. Assalamu alayka ayyuhan nabiy wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alayna wa ala ibadillahi as-salihin. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadar Rasulullah. Right, they are compulsory as how I wrote them. Right. So number 14, right? It is number 14 would be to sit. To sit during the length of it. Right. So for number 14, the entire tashahud, it is compulsory for you to be seated. Right. It is compulsory for you to be seated. Right. So you cannot begin your attahiyah when you're still kind of like moving from your sujood up to your sitting position. I mean, if anyone does that, lah, I don't know. Right, if anyone ever does that. Right. So like when you're getting up from your from your sujood position, you're getting up from sujood and you go Allah. And Allahu Akbar, at-tahiyyatul mubarakatul salawatul tayyibatu lillah. And you're not seated, you're kind of like on the way. As you're on the way to to being seated. So if you're not seated, the first part tahiyyatul lillah is not counted. You have to be firmly seated for that first part to be counted. Right? So I mean you have to be seated lah. You have to be seated for the first part to be counted. Just ensure that you're seated, the first part, and just ensure you're not like doing anything else. Right? With it. Same thing with the sujud. The sujud, 7 limbs have to be on the ground, right? So if any point in time, like for example, you do your sujud, right? Right. Some people, because they are using their hands to hold things or carry babies or like hold, their hijab down to cover their aura. I don't know what they're doing with their hands. Right? Or they're holding a mushaf, right? So I've seen people whereby they sujud on one hand and not the other. The other hand is busy holding down something, right? Or holding up something. So they sujud on 6 limbs, right? The forehead, one hand, 2 knees, and 2 feet, right? And then their sujud is not counted. They have to have at least a moment, right, of tumatnina with both hands on the ground. They need to have that. Right? In fact, I've seen this boy, and then mashallah, this boy when he was doing his sujud, right, I could see that his feet kind of flew up into the air. So be careful. It could be a habit that they start when they're young and then it continues into their older age, which is why it is necessary that when your children reach puberty, to send them for like really salat 101, or make them learn their salat again. Right, so as to ensure that the salat is correct. Right, so basically this boy, like, I saw him doing this. Right, so he's doing his sujud. This is it, and here is his hands. Okay. What he was doing was very strange thing that he was doing. Right, he was like crossing his legs in the air. He was doing this. So I happened to not be praying. I was doing this. I think some kids do this. Right? The ground is here. I can be the honest. So when they do their sujud, like this feet, it's flying in the air. No, and they're not. It's not on the ground, basically. It's not on the ground. So I think I wasn't praying at that time, and I was just watching people pray. And then so I was like, hey, why this boy? And I think at the time he was 12 or 13. I was quite an older person. I mean, a young boy, but he could reach puberty anytime, and he was doing his sujud like that. Right? He was like kind of rocking himself, right, in that way, and then the feet were flying in there. So it could be that maybe no one ever noticed it, right? That he was doing that. And if let's say he goes into his into puberty, and then his salah is all like that, right? His salah is like he's flying his feet in the air, and then his sujud all the way not counted. His sujud is all not valid. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Right? So just be very, very basically, if all of your children and yourself as well, I have someone check you. I'll have to have someone check them. Right? Someone of knowledge, right? Someone of knowledge, watch them pray. Right? Watch them pray and then correct, what they are doing wrong. Right. So that they know. Right? They know how to perform these prayers. Right. And also to test them in how they recite. Right. So what are they reciting? Right. So I know of kids still like 7, 8 years old, 9 years old, the Fatiha, they're still saying things like amta alayhim. So saying an'amta an'amta, right? Noon then mim, right? You can say N then M, right? Not M. It's not amta, right? And then مستقيم صراط الذين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم. Right, meme. Right, so I mean, a lot of them go mustaqin. Right, they mix up their meme and their noons. Um, and then another common mistake that I see children do will be إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. They go into a meme. I don't know why. Right, but they go into a meme. Right, so I'm like, mashallah. Noon, right? إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. I just heard a boy who was, I think, 8 or 9 years old. Right? I heard him. He was like, إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. And I stopped the class. I was like, I hear someone saying a meme here, and I checked every single one of them to find out who is the culprit. Allah, not culprit, money. Who's the one who's doing it? Right? So I checked every single one of them. Then I found out who was the person. I kept hearing it. I kept hearing saying someone mess up their noons and their memes. Mashallah. So just get it right, inshallah. And just make sure that habits that were kind of developed when you were younger, you don't carry them on into your adult age. Right. So get your salat checked, get your Fatiha checked, right? Get your recitations checked, get your movements checked. Right. So you don't end up doing things that you learned when you were like 6 years old. And then like until now you're like 30, 40, 50, and you're still doing it. Right. Just get yourself checked. Alhamdulillah. Naam. Okay, so to see during the length of it, that's number 14, right? And then number 15 is a slawat, right? Slawat onto Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And I put what is minimum, right? So just put what is minimum. Number 15, right? 15th is to send salawat onto the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allah. Okay, so on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? Okay, so what is the minimum for this one? Right, is to say, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Okay, that is minimum. Right, the least, the wajib, like the minimum wajib. That's why if someone is just learning the religion, and like they could be Muslim or not, or they could just be converts, or they could be Muslims who are trying to get back to their religion. I will just teach them this 4 letters. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Right. So I'll just teach them that. Right? Remember this one. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Right, to make it easy for them first, right? So then as they grow in the religion and as they learn more stuff, right, they can learn the entire Salawat Ibrahimiyya. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala ali Sayyidina Muhammad kama sallaita ala Sayyidina Ibrahim, and so on, right? So which is why learning the wajib is important, right? Because you don't know who really needs it. And they find it really hard to memorize it. Right? So I met recently a woman in her old age. She was elderly. She was, I think she's 60s, almost 70. And she just never memorized the attahiyat. And she never memorized the tashahud. Because when she was young, right, she dismissed it as too long. Right? She just said to herself, it's too long, it's too hard. So she never actually memorized it till she was 60 or 70. Right? She never actually memorized it. And she would just read Fatiha throughout her entire prayer. So whichever position she was in, she would read Surah Fatiha. So standing Fatiha, ruku' Fatiha, i'tidal Fatiha, sujud Fatiha, between sujud Fatiha, sujud again Fatiha. The entire prayer, she would just recite Surah Fatiha over and over and over and over again, because that was all she knew. And that was all she knew. And so when I was teaching her, and then she asked me personally the question, and she said that, is it okay if I read Fatiha the entire Salat? And I said, what do you mean by the entire Salat? It's just like, and she told me literally, she reads Fatiha for every movement. And I said to her, you have to learn that at least the tashahud. She has to learn at least the tashahud. Because it is the other wajib, right? So in between, she can do what she wants to do. She can just say subhanallah in between anyway, right? But if it's really hard on her, she's elderly, right? So I wrote it down actually. I wrote this down for her. Right, so I wrote 5, right? I wrote 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, right, on a piece of paper, and then I gave it to her. And I said, this you must do. This you must do. And I just said, you can hold on to it when you pray, so that in case you can't memorize, at least you can read it, right? So at least these things that they need to do. Of course, this will be minimum wajib. Right, so of course, Lawat Ibrahimi, yeah, right, is what is recommended. Okay, that means better lah. You see better. Okay, Alhamdulillah. Drawings. Okay, let's see. This is 15 and then 16. All right. Let's go through a bit quicker. Salams. Okay, the salams. So basically to say Assalamu alaikum. Right, Assalamu alaikum. Okay, sunnah is to say wa rahmatullah. Okay. Assalamu alaikum wajib wa rahmatullah sunnah. All right, so salams, only the first salam is wajib. The second salam is sunnah. All right, so for example, someone finish praying and they go Assalamu alaikum, and then they let out air. They let out air. Is the prayer valid? Yes, the air came after they said salams. Right, so because they have already said the first salams, so they're done with their prayer. Right, so even if they have not said wa rahmatullah and they have not gone the second salams, it's okay. Right, it's okay. Why? Because the prayer is done. By the first salam, the prayer is done. Right, so even if they let out gas thereafter, they nullify their wudu thereafter, it does not harm the prayer. Right, the prayer is still valid. And the last integral, right, there are 17 integrals. Right, so the last integral is tartib, which is in order. All of these need to be in order. So, and because also, right, that the validity of the next action is dependent on the validity of the action prior to that. All right. So the validity of the next action is dependent on the validity of the action prior to that, inshallah. And mashallah, so we have gone through we very briefly gone through the 17 integrals of the prayer, right? So inshallah, then now he's going to go into a bit of detail into some of the 17, right? So he's going to speak about niyat. He's going to speak about takbiratul ihram, going to speak about qira'at surah Fatiha, right, and so on. Okay, alhamdulillah. Okay, now he's going to go into a few of the issues. Then after after going through all of that, he'll be going into the ab'adus salah, which will be a topic that I think a lot of people need a refresher on, either a refresher or a first time learning, of this topic, right? Ab'adu Salah, right? It covers basically sunnas, right? Or you might call them major sunnas, right? They are major sunnas, which if you forget them, it is a sunnah for you to perform sujud sahwi. Right? Sujud sahwi is the sujud of forgetfulness. Right? So we will be getting, we will get there. All right. Let me just continue. Anyone has any questions so far? So far, it's straightforward. Right. So far, anyone has any questions? Anyone has any questions? If no questions, I will continue with the second part that he speaks about. Okay. So about tertib, right? About tertib, about in order. If you miss any of the, if you miss any of the parts of the prayer, you have to go back to it, right? So let me just explain this part. So in order, right? If you, let's say, you forget any of the integrals of the prayer, right? If you have not come to the likes of it yet, right? Then the moment you remember, you got to go back to it, right? But if you have come to the likes of it, you just continue, and the raka'at that lacked that integral will be none. The raka'at will be none. Let me give you an example. Right? So if let's say a person is praying, right? And they forget to do a second sujud. Okay. So for example, or maybe they even forgot to do the sitting down. So they go into the first sujud. They held the sujud for very long. This is why it's not recommended to hold your first sujud for long, because you might forget, right? So maybe this person first rak'at, right? First rak'at goes into the first sujud, held it for very long, held it for very long, doing all the kinds of du'as. Then got up from sujud, thinking it was the second sujud, but actually it was the first sujud, and got straight back up for second rak'at. So what this person has done is missed the sitting between the two sujuds and missed the second sujud, right? Because she actually got up from the first sujud straight into standing. Okay, so on the first sujud, she got up straight into standing. Okay, for this person, right? For as long as she has not reached the sitting between the two sujuds, okay, at any point in time, if it occurs to her, if she remembers, right, that she did not do the sitting between the two sujuds, at any point in time, if she remembers this, straight away, immediately, she must stop whatever she's doing and she must go and sit. She must go to what she missed out. Immediately. She must go to what she missed out. And then she needs to continue the rak'at from there, right? And then continue as usual, right? As normal. I hope you can understand. However, if she does not remember at all, right, until she actually sits down after the in the second rak'at, right, in second rak'at, she sits down after the first sujud, and then she remembers, just now I did not do the first sujud, I did not do the sitting down after sujud, I got up, right? So while she's seated, she remembers, just now I didn't do that, right? Then she's already sitting down anyway, right? So then the first rak'at that she did is deficient, so therefore it's null. Right? It's null rak'at. And the current rak'at that she's doing is counted as the first. Okay? Should I draw? Or should I write? Should I write? I think I write. I don't know why my pen is not working properly. Okay? Right. So let me just draw the order. Okay? So stand. Fatihah. Right? And then she ruku. Then she i'tidal. Right? And then she sujud. Okay. And then I'm gonna put this. She stands for second rak'at. Okay. The problem happened here, right? The mistake happened here. All right. She only did one sujud. Okay. So now this person change the color. I'll change the color. If scenario one. If she remembered before doing this thing between two sujuds. Allah. 1 second. Rakaat. Then she goes to sit immediately. Allah. Okay. Example. Okay. So there's the scenario, right? Miss put it in bold. This is the scenario. Okay, this is the okay, so let me just take this. This is what happened, right? So she did a problem. Okay. All right. So now after she stands for second rakaat, okay, so basically she forgot, right? She stood second. Then she goes ahead. And why is it this stop? Okay. Then she goes ahead and ruku'. Okay. Alright. Okay, so during ruku', maybe during ruku' or maybe itidal lah. Yeah, itidal. Okay, then at this point, right, remembers she did not sit. Okay, so during her i'tidal, it occurred to her, hey, just now I didn't sit down. I didn't sit down after sujud. I got up straight away. Okay, so what must she do? Right, I'm going to change this into green to show now she's rectifying herself. Green. Okay, so what she do? Sit immediately. Right? Don't continue the rakaat. Okay, sit immediately, right? And continue the first rakaat that was deficient. Okay, let me spell it correctly. Okay, so basically the entire thing in red is null. The entire thing in red is null, right? Because she did not go by tertib, right? So her standing for second rakaat and her ruku' and her itidal all not counted. So that's why she needs to kind of like strike it out and do a strikeout. How to do a strikeout? Yeah. Okay. So basically, she needs to go back to what she's supposed to do. So that's why she has to sit immediately. Okay. So hopefully this is clear. All right. Oh, I didn't confuse anybody by striking it out. Let me just undo this. Okay. All right. Okay. If scenario 2. How to do this one? Oh. Control B. Change the color. Okay. Okay, see. Oh, is it bolded? Scenario 2. Okay. Scenario 2, right? If she does not remember until she does an action like it. Okay. It just sits during second rakaat. Then she takes that rakaat as the first and the original first is null. Okay, let's do the example. So let me see. Let me just come out here. Okay. All right. So Fatiha, ruku, and sujud. She makes the mistake here. She stands for second rakaat. She ruku, she itidal, did not remember anything. Right. She continues. She sujud. Right. And then she sits. Okay. So at the point she sits, remembers. Okay. So she was thinking, it's not, I didn't do the sitting down. And she remembers at this point. What should she do? Put it in green. What should she do? Right? Continue. But take it as the previous rakaat. Okay. So, right, she will sujud again. right? And then she will stand for second rakaat. Okay, right? So basically, the current rakaat will count as first. And then, when she gets up again, it's the second rakaat. So which means this first part was null. And this first part became null. You get it? All right. So the kind of like her prayer began here. Okay. Like for this one, right? This entire part became null. Okay, I hope I'm not confusing anybody. Okay. Okay. Let's say scenario 3. Completely forgets all the way. All the way forgot until the end of the prayer. Right? So she continues, pray second rakaat, third rakaat, did the fourth rakaat. Okay, fourth rakaat, when she was doing the attahiyah, right? She remembers, first rakaat I was doing a long sujud. And I did not sit after my sujud. I got up. So if she remembers at that point, all she has to do is get up and do one more rakaat. That's all. Just do one more rakaat with the final tashahud, as usual. Okay, let's see. Anyone has any questions? Um, let's see. The question is, I prayed beside a person who actually did sujud instead of ruku. When she realized her mistake, she immediately went up to the position, but said, Astaghfirullah, Astaghfirullah. Is that considered talking during Salat? Will it nullify her prayer because she had Astaghfirullah? No, it will not nullify. It's counted as a zikr. Astaghfirullah counts as zikr. So her prayer is fine. Her prayer is fine. Right? But she shouldn't be doing it lah. Right? But it counts as a zikr. Alhamdulillah, she said astaghfirullah, not like alamak ke apa. Right? So she said alamak or like oh no, or like, or make some other noises, then that will have nullified her prayer. But saying astaghfirullah counts as zikr. Okay. Alhamdulillah. Naam. Okay, let me just continue. Let's see. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad. Okay, no other questions, Right, that's basically it about tartib. Now, okay. Okay, let me continue. So he says here, وَالنِّيَّةُ مَحَلُّهَا الْقَلْبِ وَتَلَفُّزُ بِهَا سُنَّةٌ فينبغي استحضار نية الدخول في الصلاة عند النطق بتكبيرة الإحرام. فلو نطقت بتكبيرة الإحرام وقلبها غير مستحضر النية لم تصح الصلاة حتى تعيد التكبيرة مع استحضار النية بالقلب. وهذه هذه مسألة يغفل كثير من الناس عنها فتراهم يحرمون بالصلاة وقلوبهم غير مستحضرة النية. So I went through this part. وتكبيرة الإحرام تمام. Okay, the first one. So نية. Okay. Niat lah So I'll wait for it. I used to. Niat, right? Its place is in the heart. And to utter it out loud is sunnah. Right? So a person must or say it's wajib, it is wajib. It's wajib, it is wajib on a person to have Allah, like to have niyat present in the heart when she enters into the prayer. Right? When right during her utterance of the takbir ratul ihram. Okay, she must istihdarun niyah. She must have the niyat present in the heart when she enters into prayer during her utterance of the takbiratul ihram. Right, so important here, right? So hence, if she uh utters the takbiratul ihram, while her heart is heedless. Okay, while her heart is heedless in the prayer. Okay, right. So if she utters takbir ihram while her heart is heedless, not in the prayer, heedless of intention, right? Of having the intention in it. Okay. Her prayer is not valid. لم تصح صلاته حتى تعيد تكبيره مع استحرارية. It's not valid until she repeats the takbir, Salatul Ihram, with the niyat present in her heart. Okay, so as the tongue is saying Allah, right, of the Allahu Akbar, if the tongue is saying Allah, your heart should be saying Usalli fardal dhuhri. At least these three words must be in your heart. These three words must be in your heart. Right? Or you can say in English, I am praying fardu zuhur. Like, I am praying fardu zuhur. Right? In your heart. At least this word, you must have I am praying. You must have the word fardu and you must have the word zuhur. Right? You must say fard and you must say the name of the prayer. Okay, so as your tongue says Allah, right, your heart goes, I am praying for the Zohar. It's easy, it's not hard. And inshallah, it's not hard. Like, you can always have, your tongue say something and your heart say something else. It's like, I mean, we do it all the time, right? Don't we? Yeah, I mean, throughout the prayer, people do it all the time. Throughout the prayer, their mouth, their mouth is saying Fatiha, and then their heart is all over the place. Then when you say to them, oh, when you do takbir, your heart was your niyat, they were like, it's too hard. We can't have your heart and your tongue doing separate things. You do it all the time. Right? So it's not hard. It's not hard at all. I have children who can do it. Right? So basically in your heart you go, I am praying for the Zuhur. Or easier, Usalli for the Zuhri, Usalli for the Asri, Usalli for the Maghribi, Usalli for the Subhi, Usalli for the Isha'i. Right? These are the wajib parts of the niyat. Of course, if you can bring the entire thing into your heart as you enter the prayer, then good, mashallah. So if you say usalli farda zuhri arba'a raka'atin ada'an mustaqbil qibla lillahi ta'ala Allah. So no, the Allah is happening throughout the entire thing, right? So if you can do the entire thing, then alhamdulillah. But 3 words in, it's not hard, inshallah. Inshallah, it's not hard. I have to do it together while your tongue says the takbir. And so he says here, Naam, and he says here, right, this issue, unfortunately, right, many people are unaware, right? They don't know, right? And so you see them doing the takbir, Takbiratul ihram, if no niyat, right, in their hearts. They think the one that you say before the takbir is the one that is wajib. No, the one that you say before takbir is sunnah. Right? So as we go, Salli farda zuhri arba'a raka'atin ada'an lillahi ta'ala. The one is sunnah. Allahu Akbar. In your heart, you go, Salli farda zuhri. Right? So in your heart, that one's wajib. Right? So whatever you said before takbir is sunnah. Right? Whatever you're saying during takbir is the wajib. Right? So there's a problem now that most people take it to be, they take the first one to be the wajib. Okay, alhamdulillah. Bismillah. Okay, alhamdulillah. I think we will stop here for today for the fiqh, and we'll go into the other book. Anyone has any questions? Anyone has any questions? Okay, if nobody has any questions, we will open the other book, inshallah. Yes. Alhamdulillah, ya Allah, ya Rabbi. I'm actually feeling very, very tired. I had a very long day. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. Okay, Bismillah. Maybe we stop at a bit earlier today. Alhamdulillah. Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Are we with religions with friends? Or we have finished that one? I think we have finished that one, right? We are at relations with the Muslims.
I think, Saza, you previously said that you wanted to speak further about relations with friends.
On the relation with friends again, is it? Did I see that?
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, something about being friends for the sake of Allah.
Okay, so friendship was with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, let's do the I think the last time I did it very fast. Okay, so relations with friends, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So those who love each other for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are of the 7 groups that will be shaded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala under his shade on the day in which there is no shade except for his subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we should memorize who these 7 are, and I think I have spoken about them many times in every class. Right, so by now I should memorize, right? By now you should memorize who are these 7. So the first one is, let's see the chat. Let's see people fill up the chat. First one, what's the first one of the 7? Have you all been like apa? Memorizing? And who are the 7 groups of people under the shade of Allah's throne on a day whereby there is no shade except for his shade? What's the first one? Let's see. Nobody wants to type. On the chat, just put on the chat. Okay, just ruler. Well done. Another one, second one. There's 7 of them. A just ruler. Youth who grew up in the worship of Allah. Yes, correct. Next. Next. You're checking notes. Don't check notes. I try and memorize. A man whose heart is attached to the mosque. Well done. Next. Next one. This is 3. That's 3 so far. Someone who remembers Allah alone, his tears starts to flow. Correct. Someone who gives sedekah so secretly that his right hand and his left hand are not, that his right hand is not aware, or his left hand is not aware what his right hand gave, right? Means secret sedekah. 2 persons who love each other because of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they meet for Allah's sake and they part for Allah's sake. Yes, correct. Is it 7? No. No, there's one more. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. One more. Last one. What is the last one? Test you all more. What's the last one? If you know the story of a 3 men in the cave, you will know the last one. Because whenever I remember the last one, I will just remember that story of the 3 men in the cave. Yeah, right. A man who's called by a woman for beauty and position, and he says he fears Allah. He rejects her. He rejects her. The story of the 3 men in the cave, in case you all want to know the story, right? Is that and this is narrated by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You can find it there. That the 3 men, right? They were traveling, and then and then nightfall came, and they entered into a cave. And when they entered into a cave, a boulder rolled down the mountain and blocked exactly the mouth of the cave. So they were all stuck in the cave. So, and this happened before the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So they all three were stuck in the cave. So one of them said, I don't see any way out of this cave except that we tawassul with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for our deeds or by our deeds. Right? So each of us will do a tawassul. A tawassul meaning we will ask Allah, right, by any of the good deeds that we have already done in the past. I will ask Allah and use these deeds, right, to get our du'as to be answered. Right? So we dua to Allah to free us from the cave or free us, from this boulder in front of the cave, right? And we'll use our previous deeds, right, to, find a way to get our duas answered. And from this hadith, comes the dalil or the proof that you can use previous deeds. You can use previously done deeds, right? And tawassul in that way. You can ask tawassul basically means to make dua to Allah using something beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whether it be a person or whether it be a deed, right? So whatever is beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the first man goes, and I'm going to go back to our chapter in a while, but I'm going to tell this story first, because it's a nice story, mashallah. One of my favorite stories that Rasulullah used to tell. Rasulullah is such a, mashallah, storyteller, mashallah. Right. So the first man comes and he says, Ya Allah, right? Ya Allah, I had parents, I had two parents. Right. And nobody is more of a priority to me than these two in my two parents. So he said every day I'll go out and I'll come back, with milk, right, to give to my parents as food. And I'll always give to my parents first before giving to anybody in my family. Right, not my children, nor my wife. Right. So he said, so one day, Ya Allah, I went out, and I was delayed. Right. So by the time I came back, it was already nightfall and my parents had fallen asleep. So I sat by the bed of my parents with the milk in my hand, waiting for them to wake up. And I refused to give the milk to anyone before I gave it to my parents first, to allow for the parents to drink however much they want. Right. So that's his priority for his parents, right? So he said, I stayed there the entire night waiting for them to wake up with my kids crying of hunger, at my feet, mashallah, until they woke up. And then when they woke up, they drank to their fill, and then I gave the milk to my children, right, and to my wife. And the man goes, Ya Allah, if you are pleased with what I did, then please save us from what we are in. Right? And the boulder moves a little bit, but it is not enough for them to escape. So now comes the second person. Right? Now comes the second person. So the second person goes, Ya Allah, I had a cousin, female cousin. I had a cousin that I really loved. Right? In the sense what he meant is lusted. Right? I lusted over this cousin. Right? And he said, I loved her the way a man loves a woman. Right? And I have, approached her many times, and she kept rejecting me. Right? So eventually, she came to me saying that she's going through some hard times and she needs some money. Right? She's going through hard times, she needs some money, she's poor. So I said to her, I will give you some gold if you give me just one night, right, together with me. Right? If you give me just one night together with me, I will give you some money. Right? And so because she was desperate, right, she was desperate, she was desperate to survive, she agreed to it out of desperation. So he said, so I gave her the gold, right? And we had our, we had the meeting. I mean, basically we had the maw'id, right? The promise. So and this is how he actually described it. The hadith is quite explicit. So he said, and so as I was, standing there, between her legs, I was standing there between her legs. That means at the height of shahwat. She cried out and she said, do not break a seal except by its right. I mean, by nikah. They could have nikah or marriage. Do not break a seal except by its right. And then he said, and at that point, fear filled my heart. Fear for Allah filled my heart. And I walked away from her. I walked away from her and I left the gold with her. And I did not ask her for it ever again. So he left what was most beloved to him to do out of his fear for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this second guy, he actually did not do any, you will say he didn't do, actually, technically he didn't do any righteous deed. what he did do was stay away from a sin, which is a righteous deed in itself, yes. Right? But it was like an amal salihah, you know? Interesting, right? Right? He actually, I mean, for him to get to his position, he must have done some sins, right, to get to that position. But he walked away, right? At the height of his desire, at the point where he can commit the sin, he walked away. And he walked away from it out of fear for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he says, Ya Allah, if you want, that's why whenever I remember the seven people, I always think of this guy. I did this particular guy. I always find him very interesting. Like, why, of all things to mention in your life that you have done, mashallah, to mention that, maybe it was the hardest thing that he's ever done, and it was really, really, really purely for Allah's sake, because nobody could stop him at that point, right? Right? And no one knew about it, probably, right? So, and he only did it because Allah knows, and he's fearful of Allah. But I always find that story very interesting, right? That he would mention that in front of everybody there, and then he'll make dua by that. Interesting, making dua by a sin that you actually walked away from, inshallah. So anyway, but he said, Ya Allah, if you are pleased with what I did, then free us from what we are in. So that the rock moved again, the boulder, it moved again, but it was still not enough for them to get through. So then, right, comes the third person. And the third person goes, Ya Allah, I had a laborer work for me once, right? He was a day laborer. He worked for me for one day. And then before I could pay him, he left. So the wealth that was meant for him, I invested. So I bought a goat from that wealth, and it multiplied, and it multiplied, and it multiplied. And then I bought some land, and I had some, plantations or whatever. And it became like a big field of plantations and animals. So he said, after many years, this man, this one day laborer, came back. And he came back and he said to me, give me what you owe me. And he said to me, give me what you owe me for the one day of work. So I said to him, you see this land in front of you? With all the animals in it and all the plants and plantations in it? All of it is yours. And the guy goes, don't play with me. Oh, Abdullah, don't play with me. Don't play with me about this. And he said, I'm not playing. I'm not playing if it's yours. It's all from that amount that you didn't claim. Now I invested and it grew, right? So this guy, another very interesting story also. I find that their story is also interesting, right? So this guy says, so this one day laborer, he takes everything and leaves nothing behind for the farmer. He actually takes everything. He takes the entire land and the animals and the plantations, the crops, everything he took with no shyness. Interesting. I mean, it is interesting. And the farmer is yours, and it's from your amount you didn't claim. And then we all be like, hey, I put in the effort and I invested for you. And in the sense that we might like give him just the amount that he actually earned and not all that investments, right? We might. I don't know. But he says, Ya Allah, if you are pleased with what I did, then save us from what we're in. And the rock moved a third time, and this time it was enough for them to get out, and they were free, and they went home. MashaAllah. MashaAllah, the story is it's a hadith, the hadith, sahih, in the Salihin. So I always find it very interesting, this hadith. MashaAllah, MashaAllah. So you can never underestimate, your good deeds. And in desperate situations, if you've ever done something that was really hard on you to do, right? You can, like in times of desperation, you can make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by it. MashaAllah. Okay, let's go back to our chapter. Okay, so relations with friends. Those who love each other for the sake of Allah are of the 7 groups that will be shaded by Allah under His shade on the day in which there is no shade except for His subhanahu wa ta'ala. I just want to note that the person in the story just now, right, the second guy, right, the one who wanted to sleep with his cousin, of course the one in the 7 people under the shade of Allah's throne is a man who actually flees from a woman of beauty and position, right, who calls her saying that he is afraid of Allah. And it could go both ways. It could go both ways. A woman who flees from a man who calls her, or a man who flees from a woman who calls him. Right. So of course, actually, a better example is Nabi Yusuf lah. And Nabi Yusuf will be a better example. Right, whereby he fled, right, from his from the lady of the house, Zulaikha. Right, and she was the lady of the house, and he fled from her. And she was someone of beauty. She was very beautiful, right? Someone of beauty and of position. Right. So in our time, right, just that day I was reading some articles the about the statistics. Okay, so it was in America lah. I don't know in Singapore whether it's the same thing or not. La hawla wala quwwata illa billah. Unless you don't even know your own country, like really like what's going on in our country. And sometimes it's just heartbreaking to know also. But I was just seeing this article, I think a few days ago, someone showed me, and the statistics of how many women, they did like a poll, like a research, how many women were tempted by their superiors, right? So superior, either like a professor or a teacher or like a boss, right? Basically a superior, as someone can that they need something from, like a grade, or promotion, or to get a hit, right? They actually did a poll of really how many women faced this, that they were offered a higher position, or they were offered a higher grade, right, if they would offer sexual services, right, to their superior. And the percentage, it's just disgusting lah. It's disgusting. Right? The percentage of women. And the percentage of those who actually succumbed. Right? They succumbed to it. And that's why when I was reading, I was like, sometimes, alhamdulillah ala din Islam. Alhamdulillah for this religion. Alhamdulillah for guidance. Then again, we don't even know, how many of the Muslims are also involved in this, right? But really, it's this is what it is, right? They're offered something, so this is what this hadith speaks about, right? So a woman, she is offered by a man, to have higher position, in her company or in her grades or whatever. The professor is offering her, right, to give her a higher grade, or to give her whatever that she needs, to get ahead, if she would allow for uh for basically the superior to make use of her. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. And it's so hard to read this kind of stuff. But the percentage is more than 80%. Alarming, right? More than 80%. Either been, offered, and the amount that actually took it up is more than 50% took it up. It's really like Subhanallah. It's Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he knows what he's talking about. He knows, because the temptation is real. Right? Especially if someone's, like they're worried, that they wouldn't not get a hit. So they use their woman ness in that aspect. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Na'am. Right? So more importantly, it is essential that a Muslim does not associate with iniquitous people. Rasulullah said, associate only with believers and allow only the pious to eat your food. What does this mean? Okay, very important hadith to understand. Right, so associate with the believers, right? The hadith was لا تخال إلا المؤمنا ولا يأكل طعامك إلا التقي. That is the hadith. Right, so do not mix except with believers, meaning do not get close to. Don't get so close to others except with believers, because as Muslims, as you grow older, your religion should be taking up the majority of your time. Your religion, as you grow older, and in fact, the majority of your thoughts and the majority of your decisions is all influenced by your beliefs. I was just speaking to my mom, earlier today after we prayed Maghrib, and I like to just sit around and talk to her. And she was like, she does wonder, how are people counseled without the bringing in of religion? Because I mean, for myself personally, when, as a human being, right? Everything in my life, I find comfort in the religion. So, like, for example, to give in someone or to forgive someone or to, let something slide or to, you're right, but okay lah, you let go of the argument, or you let someone get ahead or whatsoever. Right? A lot of it, you do it because of the promise. Right? Or you do it because the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam has taught us to do so. Like a lot of it, and like any sadness that you go through, any grief, any disappointment, any whatsoever you go through, right? You just assure yourself that Allah knows, Allah is in charge, Allah is planning, Allah is, and then you think of the hereafter, you think of what's in store in the hereafter, and you like basically I would say the entire psychology of a person. It's like, okay, for me personally, it's 100% dependent on my beliefs. It is 100% dependent on my beliefs. Right. So so I was speaking to my mom and she was like, we don't know. I don't know. How do people like how do you reconcile with a lot of different things that happen in your life when you don't have a belief in the hereafter? Right. I mean I'm sure like maybe a lot of you here so like things happen and then you're like, it's so hard, it's so unfair, it's so this, so that. Then you're like, you know what? There's a hereafter. Right? There is a hereafter, things will be settled in the hereafter. Right? Inshallah, Allah sees this. Allah sees this. Allah knows what's going on, and you find comfort in that, right? Inshallah. So it does matter that the people around you are believers, right? Because they influence your thoughts, and they influence, how you conduct your life, and they call you towards what is good. So if let's say your best friend, your closest friend is a believer, right? So if you're going through something very difficult, for example, you went through a major argument with your husband, or you were disappointed by someone very close to you, and so on. And then you go to your friend, you confide in your friend, you say, you know what she did, you know what he did, you know what happened in my workplace, and you begin to lament, and you begin to let it out, and you're in this grief, or this problem that you're in. If your friend's a believer, a true believer, should be like, you know what, I'll tell you, go and take your wudu, right? Go and do your wudu, right? And then pray 2 rakats. Okay? Pray 2 rakats. Do salawat, do salat hajat, right? Give out some money in charity, right? On this problem, on this issue. Right? Do salawat. You do some salawats, right? Make dua to Allah. Right? So a believer, a friend is a believer, a true believer. I know it's not just like any old Muslim, right? But a true believer, I should say this to you. I had advice to be, on this line. I should say, do this, right? Do this, or come read some Quran, or she would say, be patient. There's reward in patience. Allah loves those who are patient. Right? So she will reward. She would advise you on this line, right? In this way, and she's like, ask Allah. Allah sees everything. Allah knows, right? So even if you feel like it's like a dead end, or you feel your hands are tied, and you feel like whatever, say Allah is all powerful, right? So we believe that, right? So in a sense, like, so having a close friend who shares your belief, right? It helps you. In fact, it really helps you in development, right? So because all these words, basically the words that from the people around you, they make you. Right? The words from the people around you, they make you, or they break you, right? That's the first meaning, right, of associate only with believers. It does not mean you can't be friends with non-believers. It does not mean that, right? But it just means that, in really your downest moments, in really your most difficult moments, right, speak to believers, right? So that, especially someone whom you trust in their Islam, you trust them in their Islam, right? So that they can give you very sound and good advice, and it will benefit your akhirah, right? As opposed to, like, for example, if you speak to someone who's not a believer, what is the furthest they could advise you? They could probably say, okay, you know what, you should just, handle this in this way. They might give you suggestions, of how you're going to handle the situation. They might, right? But if, let's say, if it's a situation that is a dead end, right? So for example, if like the death of a person, or or just like, or being betrayed or something, and you can't do anything about it. No one can do anything about it, for example, right? So the most you can say is, let it out, cry. I don't know what people say. I mean, what would they say? Right? It's gonna pass. I know it hurts, it's gonna pass. Um, that's about it, right? Right? Like they will not speak about the hereafter, not speak about God. Right? These are things that believers speak about. Right? God knows, God knows. Go and pray. Right? Maybe some non-Muslims, they might advise you to go and pray. They say, go and pray. You're Muslim, like, go and pray lah. Like, why you not praying to your God? Right? They might say that. And that's good advice, sound advice. Mashallah. Yeah, so that's basically what it means, right? So basically it's not it's not like an absolute statement, okay? But it's more of, in Arabic you call this mubalagha. Right? Mubalagha meaning, like, really, seek out people who share the same beliefs, because the advice will come from a place of iman. Mhm. All right. Then the next one is, and allow the pious to eat your food. Allowed only the pious to eat your food. What does this mean? It does not mean that you can't give charity to non-pious people. Yeah, of course you can. You can give charity to anybody, believer, non-believer, doesn't matter. You can give charity to anybody. And the prophets would do it, and our Prophet ﷺ would do it. They would give charity to anybody and anybody. But what it means by allow the pious to eat your food, meaning, when you share food regularly with a person on the same plate, right? When you share food regularly with a person on the same plate, you get close to this person. People bond over food. We know it as Singaporeans. I mean, we're so into this. Right? So we know people bond over food. People bond over food. Right? So if you every single day, right, you're gonna share food with someone, you're gonna spend time eating with someone, you really will bond. And that's how families bond as well. Right? Families bond, right, by having dinner together, or they have like a meal together once in a while, right? And that's how they bond. Right? They bond over food. So what this means here is basically sharing your meal and bonding. And bonding. So the best thing to do, is to have the one that you're sharing with to be someone who's pious. Right? That's the first thing. So because the influence happens there, the bond happens there. Secondly, right, that you want to share your food with the pious, because then your food will be used for righteous good acts. Okay, your food will be used for righteous good acts. So it does not mean you can't share your food with anybody else. Of course you can. Islam is a religion of charity and sharing. So of course you can give to anybody you want. Right? But what it means here is what you would say in Arabic. It is a balagha, right? It is something that is just to emphasize. So the way of the language is an emphasis, right? But it's not like you can't do beyond this. No. Okay. So I hope you understand that. All right. I think we'll stop there for today. So inshallah next week I'll continue from that hadith there. Right there. Okay, جزا الله عنا سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم خيرا. جزا الله عنا سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وأهله. جزا الله عنا سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم خيرا. جزا الله عنا سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وأهله.